After their fourth or fifth complete roster overhaul in a row, the Toronto Defiant have landed on some really talented players, taking the most prolific and talented North American players around, building something of a super team, building off of the roots of the most successful North American contenders team of all time, the American Tornado. But how good are the players really? And can they compete with the other super teams developing in the region for titles? Or are they cursed through another year of mediocrity? I think we should find out. Starting with the DPS line, they grabbed Hydron from the Florida Mayhem, Speedily from the Atlanta Reign, and Sam from the San Francisco Shock. This is not a bad DPS line at all. Speedily has yet to really reach his full potential, and his Genji was very solid, and his Echo was elite. And he can even pull out a decent Tracer and Sojourn too. And we all know what he's capable of from contenders. Hydron, I don't rate incredibly highly. I thought he was pretty inconsistent all year, and his Tracer and Sombra were not impressive to me. But by God, did his Sojourn and Widow pound to the postseason. It was honestly absurd. He skyrocketed to be merit and shy level statistically, and it was a hard carry for Florida. I'm really happy about his pickup. Then Sam was honestly quite good for Shock. His Sojourn was better than anyone expected it to be, arguably being better than Kilo's. He's an insanely flexible player, but is a bit of a jack-of-all-trades, master-of-none type player. I really think this is a solid DPS lineup, but honestly, don't hate me for this, but I feel like they need to prove themselves more. Speedily and Hydron need to prove they aren't as streaky as they seemed, and I'd love to see Sam grind the more niche heroes and get a sick Tracer as well to cover up the weaknesses of the team. I'll give this DPS line, let's say, 7 out of 10. Honestly, all very talented players with tons to prove, but I don't know that they were all that impressive to me last year, and they do have a pretty big flex DPS gap, even if Hydron is cracked. Plus, Dante did make a good point. In recent times in Overwatch, the flex DPS was the one to pick up the Tracer, as a Tracer Genji paired with a hit scan has been the primary meta recently. And while Hydron is the best Tracer on a team and also the best hit scan. Same as Speedily have alright Tracers, but compared to the S tier teams in the region, they fall short massively. They're weirdly well-rounded, but they really have holes. I really hope they realize their potential, though. Next up, the tank. They have signed Kaluge as their solo tank for now. Man, as much as I love Kaluge, losing Reiner is a pretty big blow. Reiner is elite at almost every main tank, and while Kaluge is a surprisingly decent Winston, I don't think it's enough to push these guys past their limits. I do really like Kaluge, though. Really solid player. He's an elite Sigma and Junker Queen, fantastic diva, really solid Doom, Winston, and Zarya. If there's ever an off-tank meta, these guys are set, but losing Reiner sucks. I'll give this tank line a 6 or 7 out of 10, probably a 7. Again, I love Kaluge, but his main tank play and even his Zarya play is just not going to cut it against a lot of the top teams. I hope to be proven wrong, though. I do think Kaluge is a fantastic talent. Next up, the supports. They grabbed the American Tornado backline of OG and Ultraviolet, as well as picking up everyone's favorite European flex support, Sir Majed. Honestly, a pretty solid support line. I honestly believe that OG and Ultraviolet are a really strong duo with a lot of promise. Ultraviolet was solidly an A-tier player, and with consistently good performances on Zen and Ana especially, but let's not talk about his Brig. OG was honestly underrated. People thought he was a big disappointment, but just because he's not the second coming of Lee Jae-gon doesn't mean he's bad, guys. He was honestly a pretty solid Lucio and Brig, and his flex supports were pretty good. That's how much I'm not really a fan of, but he has a pretty good Zen and Kiriko. I'd say 7 out of 10 support line. While you talk them up, I don't think they're anything super crazy individually, but as a duo, I think OG and Ultraviolet are stronger than the sum of their parts, and Surmajed might be able to improve his play if he just stops feeding. Finally, the coaching staff. We have No Hill from Team CC and last year's Los Angeles Valiant, Weech, the head coach from Tier 2 Drama Alert Nation, American Tornado, and Redbird Esports, and finally entering the league after dominating Tier 2 NA for 3 years. And Kasor is finally becoming a head coach after 3 years working under Krusty for the Shock, where he made 2 grand finals and obviously worked under arguably the greatest coach of all time. Honestly, this is a really stacked coaching staff, like for reals. No Hill is an incredibly smart coach who did wonders for Team CC and made Valiant somewhat competitive despite infinite issues on the team. Weech has worked with all these guys to a lot of success before, and Kasor has been on a championship tier roster before and worked under motherfucking Krusty. I might say an 8 or 9 out of 10 coaching staff. These guys are going to cook, and I'm here for it. I think they can elevate the team past their potential. All in all, I think this is a pretty good team with real dark horse potential. They have a really talented core and great synergy, and I can see them sneaking to the top 5, but they really have some holes. Kaluge is a fantastic player, but again, not that big a fan of his main tanks, especially when he's not playing with fucking proper. And I don't think Speedily and Sam are good enough on the Tracer to completely alleviate my worries. But I do think this is a pretty solid team, and I would not be surprised to find them end up in the top 5. But right now, I think they're geared up for another middling season, unfortunately. I will be glad to be proven wrong, though. I'm a fan of all of these guys. Thanks for watching.